All right, so you really want to go heavy running back to start your fantasy football draft, but you're a little bit worried what your wide receivers may look like if you do. Well, forget about it. I got you covered with a few must-have mid-round wide receivers. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you guys are all doing well out there. Welcome back, Draft.com Studios. Today we're talking about a few must-have mid-round wide receivers. We've been pushing it on this channel for weeks. We've been talking about how we really want to go heavy running back early if possible in this draft here in 2019. But if we do that, what do our wide receivers on our roster actually look like? That's what we're talking about today. What wide receivers are out there in the 4th, the 5th, the 6th rounds that can really solidify our wide receiving group if we go heavy running back early. I also got a few other names a little bit later in the draft, so we'll throw out at the end of the show. But these are the 3 rounds we're going to focus on right now. We need to find some upside and some consistency to really give us a solid, balanced team, even if we do decide to go heavy running back early. Real quick, before we get into this list, make sure you head over to our website after the video, thefantasyheadliners.com. Lots of other great information over there. Plus, we're giving away this autographed Alvin Kamara jersey here right over my shoulder. If you want to win this jersey, you can enter just by purchasing one of our draft guides. Anybody who purchases one of our draft guides up until August 15th is entered to win. Great value, almost 500 pages of straight fantasy football content for only $19.99 to help you dominate here in 2019. So make sure you go check that out on our website after this video. However, right now, let's talk about a few must-have mid-round wide receivers for 2019. All right, let's kick it off here in the 4th round. There's a few wide receivers out there that I would really like to target if I went heavy running back early in my fantasy football drafts. It's Brandon Cooks and Stefon Diggs. Brandon Cooks has actually had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons here in his career. And last year, he set a career high in receiving yards with 1,204. And that really wasn't just due to Cooper Kupp getting injured like I can hear a few of you saying. In the 8 games that those two played together, Brandon Cooks still had 4 100-yard games in those 8 contests. He averaged 15.1 yards per reception for the season, and he can really make things happen after the catch. If you've ever heard of the term yak yards, yards after catch, last year, Brandon Cook had 348 yards after the catch. He's a real home run threat. He averaged 2.1 fantasy points per target in 2018, and he could easily do that again. Can Cooper Kupp come back 100% all season long after tearing his ACL in November? Does Todd Gurley get the normal volume that we're used to seeing, or does a reduced work volume really open up the passing game a little bit more? Do they rely more on the passing game in LA this year than really on the legs of Todd Gurley? Also another possibility. If either of those happen, it can only potentially boost the value of Brandon Cooks even more, giving you that real home run threat, not so much of a huge PPR monster, but on a weekly basis, he could put up a huge game and help you win your contest. As your wide receiver 1, you could do a lot worse, especially if you went heavy running back to start your draft. Let's not forget about Stefon Diggs, though, in this same 4th round. I mean, he's had solid seasons in the past, but is this the year that he absolutely goes off? I mean, last year he set career highs in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. In fact, he finished 7th in the NFL in targets, 8th in the NFL in receptions, and 8th in the NFL in touchdown amongst all wide receivers. He had 9 games in 2018 where he received at least 10 targets or more. He finished 8th among wide receivers in the NFL with 12 red zone receptions. And don't forget, Adam Thielen is on the opposite side. That's going to keep the defense honest. They're not going to be able to double team Diggs because Thielen will absolutely kill them. We already know they'll have a lot of 2 tight end sets to help protect Kirk Cousins with Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr., a healthy Dalvin Cook to start the year. He has a top 10 strength of schedule among all wide receivers here in 2019 also. You pair all that to the point that this team was 6th in the NFL in passing plays per game with 40.4 passing plays. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 10, and he's currently going off the board right now as wide receiver 15. I absolutely love the upside of Stefon Diggs. He could have a huge year in this offense. This may be the year that maybe he surpasses Adam Thielen as the number 1 wide receiver in Minnesota. Both are talented. Adam Thielen more of the PPR stud, but the big play threat, the touchdown upside, it's Stefon Diggs this year. All right, so we got our wide receiver in the 4th. What about our wide receiver 2 in the 5th? Who are a few that we could target in this round? It's Jarvis, Landry, and Godwin are the 2 names that I'm really focusing on here in the 5th round. Starting off with Jarvis Landry, the time has come to see what Jarvis can actually do with a real wide receiver one on the opposite side of him. That's something he's never had before in his career. Now, it's obvious that the Browns are stacked on offense, and there are only so many targets to go around. But you can also say that Jarvis may see the lightest coverage he has ever faced in the NFL now because of it. Defensive attention needs to be all over the field. They'll have a solid running game with Nick Chubb. We already know that OBJ is on the opposite side. Jarvis Landry could see more one-on-one coverage than he has ever seen, and the guy could really produce some numbers because of it. This is a guy who saw 19 targets in the red zone last year, which was fourth among all NFL wide receivers. And you know that defenses are going to try to lock down on OBJ the closer they get to the end zone. Is this something that Jarvis Landry can really, build upon here in 2019? It's possible. Does Jarvis take a hit in targets? Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he does. But does he get an uptick in scoring opportunities? I think he does also. This is going to be an offense you want a part of. And if you miss out on Odell Beckham Jr. early, which you more than likely will if you go heavy running back, this could be the cheaper option with the potential to be a solid wide receiver 2 for your team. Landry's worst year in his NFL career still got him 112 targets, 84 receptions, 758 yards, and 5 touchdowns, which was his rookie year and would equate to 189 PPR fantasy points. That would have made him wide receiver 24 last year. Right now, he's being drafted as wide receiver 24. Do you think this is the worst year in Jarvis Landry's career coming up? I don't think so. I'm buying Jarvis Landry in the 5th. Chris Godwin is another name, though, here in the 5th round that I'm really trying to focus on as a possible wide receiver 2 for my team. Bruce Arians is already quoted saying, hey, this guy, he's never coming off the field when talking about Chris Godwin. And he is already looking great in camp. Connecting with Jameis Winston on a few long touchdowns, the guy looks like an elite wide receiver. And we've talked about the Tampa Bay offense a lot recently, and it's really something that you want a piece of. At least on the receiving side anyway. We know this defense, it's below average. The offensive line is below average. The run game is horrendous. They're going to throw the ball a lot. Last year, Chris Godwin saw 95 targets, turned it into 59 receptions, 842 yards, and 7 touchdowns on the year, which puts him right there in the fringe wide receiver 2 tier. And he did all of that with only a 15.3% target share in Tampa Bay. No more Deshaun Jackson. No more Adam Humphries equals a lot more Chris Godwin. Not to mention, he'll see the bulk of the time in the slot of a Bruce Arians-led offense. Huge things are coming for Chris Godwin, and you could do a lot worse for your wide receiver 2 here in 2019. Moving on to the 6th round, now there's a few more wide receivers that I'm taking a look at. And before you ask the question, yes, it's entirely possible that you go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. It's possible. Maybe you started your draft with 3 straight running backs. Maybe you went 2 running backs and one of the elite tight ends early, and now you're filling out your wide receiver group. This is an absolute possibility, and Mike Williams and Tyler Boyd are 2 names that I'm looking at in the 6th round. Last year, Mike Williams finished as wide receiver 30, despite only getting 66 targets with the Chargers. He actually finished 3rd among all NFL wide receivers in fantasy points per target last year with 2.70 points per target. That's huge. And now the Chargers have 110 vacated targets in that offense that will need to go somewhere. Sure, Hunter Henry will soak up some, and we know Keenan Allen is going to get his fair share. But what if? What if Melvin Gordon sits? What if he does not report to the team? The Chargers are going to have to rely more on the passing game this year than they have maybe even in the past. Yes, Justin Jackson, Austin Eckler, they're going to be involved in the passing game also, but neither of those guys are a 3-down back. That could open up even more targets in an offense to really help boost the value of Mike Williams. If he could get close to 100 targets, he would easily fit into that wide receiver 2 tier, and right now, he's being drafted as wide receiver 26. I haven't even mentioned the touchdowns yet. We don't really buy year-to-year touchdowns because so much could happen. However, we know he's a huge red zone threat. Yes, we expect Hunter Henry to be involved there also, but that's just added upside to one Mike Williams. If you go heavy running back, Mike Williams as your wide receiver 3 is huge upside and something I would definitely take a look at. Tyler Boyd, though, is another name we don't want to forget about here in the 6th round. We need to pay attention to where his ADP goes here in the coming weeks. We know that AJ Green is hurt, and he could be out 6 to 8 weeks, but what do we do with Tyler Boyd now? I mean, it's obvious he's going to become the number one wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, but is that a good thing? I mean, last season, in games that Boyd played with A.J. Green, he was wide receiver 12 in fantasy football. When A.J. Green was out and was not playing, Tyler Boyd was wide receiver 26. So it's obvious that Boyd is more of a threat when A.J. is in the game. He just, garners so much more defensive attention. It allows Boyd to be more productive. But don't forget, the last 7 games of last year of 2018, the quarterback for Tyler Boyd was Jeff Driscoll. Now, I'm not saying Andy Dalton is Tom Brady here, but that plays a part. But here's something we don't want to forget. Here's the good thing. The mainstream media, all the talk, is about how Boyd struggles without AJ. How the injury to AJ is going to limit the upside of Boyd. He can't do it without AJ. He's not a true number 1. He's better as a number 2. You're going to hear that a lot. And it's possible that his ADP slips just a little bit, or maybe even during your draft, people are a little bit weary of it because AJ Green won't be back by week 1. But here's the good thing. This injury happened really early for AJ Green. He could be back by week 3 of the regular season. But yet you can still draft Tyler Boyd as your wide receiver 3 on your roster here. That is huge upside. For just a few weeks into the season, you could get wide receiver 12 production from Tyler Boyd, not the wide receiver 26 production that he saw without A.J. Green. Yes, there's a little risk there. There's a chance that A.J. Green maybe doesn't come back as fast. But this is your wide receiver 3 from Tyler Boyd. We already know that offensive line has taken some hits. And new coach Zach Taylor, he's a former quarterbacks coach. Hopefully he can get Dalton on the right track, and maybe this passing game gets a lot more active in 2019. It's limited risk as your wide receiver 3, but the upside could be absolutely huge for you. Don't forget about Tyler Boyd here in the 6th round. If A.J. Green can come back healthy, you get yourself a steal in the 6th round. All right, now I only broke down the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds here, but there's a few guys a little bit later in the 7th and 8th that you need to take a look at if you decide to pass on a wide receiver here at one of these rounds. 7th round, really like Christian Kirk. Another, great option in a high-powered passing offense for the Arizona Cardinals. Should be a lot more exciting. Once again, the Cardinals may not win a ton of games, but the offense could be much, much improved. And also Allen Robinson, another year coming back off of that torn ACL, another year with Mitch Trubisky, another year in that offense. He could take a huge step forward. Really like Anthony Miller, but Allen Robinson does have some upside in the 7th. In the 8th round, you got old man reliable Larry Fitzgerald, who's still being criminally underrated here in fantasy football. Is he going to go out there and be the Larry Fitzgerald of old and get you 100-plus receptions and 1,200-plus yards and 10-plus touchdowns? Probably not. But at the price that you're paying for him on draft day, still a great value. And also Marvin Jones. Don't forget about Marvin Jones of the Detroit Lions. Why are everybody's forgetting about Marvin Jones for some reason? I mean, yes, he was hurt last season, but heck, he had 5 touchdowns through 9 games last year. And 2 years ago, he had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2017. Don't forget about Marvin Jones. He's one of the favorite weapons of Matthew Stafford and could be in line for another solid year, and you can get him in the 8th round. There's a lot of talent at wide receiver out there. It's part of the reason why we want to go running back heavy here in 2019. But I want to know what you think. This is one of the most interactive channels on YouTube. Are there some other names out there? Are there some other wide receivers out there that maybe you want a little bit more in some of these rounds? Put it down below in the comment section. I would love to talk back and forth with you. Really trying to help build this community. This is not just Jake sits up here and tells everybody what to do. That's not this type of channel. I supply perspective. I give analysis and I give opinions on how I kind of see things laying out. Maybe you disagree with that, and that's cool. That's part of the purpose of this show, is to really build that interaction between the community so together we can come up with the best possible strategies to make each other super successful here in 2019 fantasy football, because we all about winning those championships and we want to do it a lot here in 2019. Be sure to head over to our website now, check out all the other information we have over there. And like I said, our draft guides for sale, $19.99, almost 500 pages of straight fantasy football fire. Let's dominate 2019 together. Look forward to hearing from you guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.